There we go. Counting down. 3, 2, 1. And you're live. Hello and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. Thank you all for coming. We're going to have a great show tonight with my wonderful co-host, David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Great night ahead, everyone. Can't wait. Tonight, we're going to be talking about 3 different Indians tonight on my part. Chofa Chiquil, Tascaluska, and Vita Chuco. All 3 of them together. Had a little practice there, everyone. Thank you, David. That's been the thing to do. I got to practice. We got people pouring in. Elderberry's in the house. Susie Q, thank you for coming. Tonight's going to be good. Everybody get ready, get set. We're going to do three Indians together, all connected by one guy, Hernando de Soto. And why so much? Because de Soto decided to go up through Florida and Alabama, headed to the Mississippi, conquering tribes along the way as he went to plunder and get all the gold.
And make himself a nuisance.
Yes.
Anybody that lives around here knows there ain't no gold in them thar hills around here.
No, that is so true. He went to these places thinking he was looking for gold, like the Aztecs, had gold. He did not find gold, although he heard that they had, but when he got there, he found out it was copper, and then they had the metal, the silver metal was actually a stone, and then they did have one thing, they had a lot of pearls. So he took those. And they didn't have much, and he kept moving on, hoping that he would find the next riches and plundering along the way, and conquering the Indians. And the Indians were very gracious to him. As I read, he would pull up and they would greet him. They would shower him with gifts. Gee, I heard this before. It seems like that's how all the Indians were. They would greet him, shower him with gifts. They would talk nice, and he would ask for stuff and safe passage, and they would grant him pretty much whatever he wanted. Food and drink and whatever they had was his, free of charge. And what did he do to repay them? He would plunder, kill, take them as slaves, just ransack the villages, destroying everything.
And plunder.
Yeah, exactly. It was like letting the devil into your house, and then he just, you treat him well and he destroys you anyway. But De Soto did all of these things. And then what is the worst thing he did was he brought the European diseases with him. He brought, which the Indians had no resistance to. And not long after he had been to these places, the diseases started to go rampant. If he'd only known, he would have just went into these villages, shook their hands, gave them some of those smallpox blankets, and then, moved on, come back all safe and sound, and then waited like 5 years, went back, and all the Indians would have been dead.
Yep.
And then he would have had free pickings. But yep. No. So anyway, we're going into the Florida first. And as always, as I promise always, we always have good things to share for all of yous. I gotta get this, shrink that so I can get to my stuff. And I do have, we'll get this up and running. And Just say Isby's in the house. Thank you so much for coming. And everybody's still over at Ryder Lee's, and they're watching Trina on. So Trina's on the show over at Ryder's tonight. So go check out his show later if you want. It's a good one. I've been watching it. Thank you, Paradox Fossils, for coming. And Delaney Pearl Jones is in the house. Thank you for coming too. I hope you're doing well. Are you all ready for Halloween? I should get Delaney on for another card reading this week before the week's over. But we're doing good. We're doing good. Tomorrow night, I want to tell everybody I will be on Smoking G Sharp at 8 p.m. Central Time. So check me out there. I'll be on with Max Vision tomorrow. Smoking G Sharp. Check it out tomorrow night. Okay. I'll try to put a trailer on Instagram or something, and you can all check that out. But it's a good show. It's part 2. I'll be talking about Azazel being trapped in Antarctica, and we'll be hearing from Max Vision, who has some good stuff to find out about Antarctica too. Who's probably done some remote viewing on it. Patricia Stanton, thank you for coming. Thank you for teaching us, she says. Yes. See, I do the work so you don't have to. Now, here's a big thing. This book that I'm getting a lot of this stuff out is from this book, which is falling apart on me. It's from 1842. It's called Famous Indians. And being an old book, it's got a lot of different stuff in there that the books and things that I've been reading don't say a lot about. So let's see. Okay, here we go. Ready, set, go. David, don't be afraid to comment on some of these pictures because they are interesting. Here's our guy, DeSoto, Hernando DeSoto. And here's his route that he took. Notice it ends here. He didn't make it very far after that. But anyway, DeSoto went up. He was thinking he's going to go up into this new land here, going through Florida. And as you all know, that the Spanish claimed Florida, this whole area kind of as theirs, up till the early 1700s, wasn't it? Something
Well,
in
the
there.
French, the French, we bought the Louisiana Purchase from the French. So
Yes, but the Florida area, we've talked about the Seminole Indians, and the Spanish had the Florida area, and then the Louisiana over here was French. So somewhere in this section, I guess this would be, this is Georgia, this is Alabama. So Alabama and Florida kind of were Spanish. I don't know where the dividing lines were exactly, but I know they had this.
Georgia was one of the first 13 colonies, remember?
Yeah, and that wasn't Spanish. But
Nope.
I do know we talked about how the slaves would run over to the border to Florida, and then they were free, and then they would get captured by the Indians and team up with them. Okay, so as you can see, he took quite a route. Okay, so our first lady we are going to talk about is this lady here, Chafa Chiquil. Yeah, she was the princess of Florida, and properly of a wide region traversed by DeSoto and his expedition. This district comprised not only of the country now known as Florida, but also a portion of Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana. So she had a big chunk of land. The territory of this princess is not, the precise area is not known. Few of the original names in the part of the continent have been preserved to the present day. So DeSoto and his wanderings. So here's one interesting thing DeSoto did. When he went places, he brought a choreographer with him to record everything. And they recorded what they saw. They wrote everything down. They kept pretty good records. They recorded the battles, what went on in the battles, what was said. I mean, it was a pretty good thing he had going on there. That's kind of why it sticks out in history, because just like a lot of these other people, they, when they record these things, it seems to stick in history a little bit better. So anyway, Chafa Quill, she was part of three children who took over the empire. She was kind of the most powerful, even though she was a woman, and the Spaniards were really impressed that she was a woman in this part of the wilderness as a leader. When they got there, the Indians, they had lofty arbors of green boughs and feasted and amused them by means that they could devise. So the Spaniards found themselves perfectly at home and at peace when they arrived there. Chafaquila, she was a princess, had a widow mother living with her in retirement and about 12 leagues distance. So she wasn't even really around. They still had to travel to her, or she was traveling to them. De Soto kept expressing that he wanted to see her. Isn't that like enticing? I swear he knew what he was doing. These Spanish guys were really smart. The Indians again were very impressed with the animals, meaning the horses. He also brought dogs. If you didn't know, De Soto had brought lots of dogs. She refused to see him, and he begged, and she sent other men out to meet them. She sent him a guy out, her son, to meet him. He was about 20, to see the Spaniards, and whom he treated with the greatest courtesy. They met with him. And then everything was going pretty good. What happened is eventually they met up with Chapaquil. And this is they went to this place here. Let's see, where is it? I was looking for this. Soto had been told before his arrival here that this country contained an abundance of white and yellow metal, which of course he did not doubt to be gold and silver. On questioning the princess, she assured him that they might obtain a plenty of the white and yellow metals here. And as proof of it, she ordered a quantity to be produced. The sight of these articles dissipated in an instant all the brilliant and plasmeric hopes which had prompted the Spaniards to be undertaken this long and perilous expedition. The yellow metal proved to be copper, and the white metal was a species of stone or hard earth which crumbled into pieces in the hand. Under this disappointment, the only conclusion was found in pearls, which existed here in abundance. Although the Spaniards were not judges of their value, Chafaquil told them that they might search the tombs in the town and in the neighboring villages where they would find enough to load all the horses in the army. As this fact seems utterly inconsistent with all other notions of the reverse of the ancestry, which is so striking of the characteristic of the Indians. The Spaniards visited and ransacked all the tombs and temples from which they took pearls, amounting to 14 bushels, according to one author, and to 25,000 pounds weighing according to another. That's a lot of pearls. They were it is pretty. The Spaniards could not be so deceived. One of the particular, this is where I think that the Indians there were way more advanced than others. Now listen to this. One of the temples merits a description, as it seems to have been the most spacious edifice which the Spaniards saw in Florida. it was above 300 feet in length and 120 in width. The roof was very steep, thickly covered with mats and completely watertight. Over the mats was a sort of tiling constructed of brilliant shells, which made a most splendid appearance in the sun. The entrance to the temple was very guarded by 12 colossal statues of men, completely armed. These statues were of wood, and their fierce and expressive consonants and imposing attitudes excited the astonishment of the Spaniards, who declared that they would have been objects of admiration in any temple of ancient Rome. All around the interior of the walls were ranged statues of men and women, the men being armed. Beneath their vaults, in which corpses were deposited, and in these recesses, the Spaniards found such quantities of pearls that all the men and horses in the army would have been insufficient to carry them off. Attached to the temple, on the outside, were 8 smaller buildings filled with bows, arrows, spears, and other weapons. This remarkable edifice was in a town called Tolomeco, which the Spaniards found deserted by the inhabitants, it having been depopulated by pestilence. Soto remained 10 days after at this capital of Chafaquil, being entertained by the noblest manner and generous princess. She supplied his army liberally with provisions for their march and furnished them with guides who were instructed to denounce war against any of the neighboring states which should not receive them in the most cordial and hospitable manner. She also gave orders that in every part of their progress, though her dominions all necessary, give them necessary supplies of provisions should be furnished to them without pay. This generosity was repaid with the blackest ingratitude. Now, out of all the Indian tribes that we've ever talked about, did you ever hear of them having money?
No.
And did you?
And for living down here in the South, I question what kind of pearls were they? They must have been freshwater mussel type pearls. Because, you know, out of the Gulf of Mexico is not, I don't remember it being renowned for having pearls, but
oops, that's the next guy.
And the bushel baskets full of them, it would take a long time to get any, you know, any pearl, especially down, like I say, down here in the South. I've just not heard of any pearls being down here.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was the kind of one of those odd things, but it was wrote in the book. He must have found something, you know. Let's see if I go this way. So anyway, what happened to the princess? With all her hospitality and gratitude that she gave him, all the food and supplies that she could want without pay. Oh, and also the temple and the statues. Not ever, besides totem poles, have I ever heard of the Indians making statues. This would be the first. Would it not? Have you ever heard of that?
A statue, yeah, that I don't know of anybody doing statues.
Yeah, the Indians, I've never seen a spot where or read of anything where the Indians carved statues of men and women.
Where was her camp? Is there any?
It didn't say. It just said Tolomeco. Tolomeco, Tolomeco. Tolomeco. This town was called Tolomeco.
Because I live down here in the South.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You know, and there's the Hernando de Soto's stuff all over the place. So,
and who knows, maybe when he left, he just burnt it, because that's what he did. You know, he came in, conquered, burned the houses, everything, destroyed everything in his wake, you know, and literally killed all the people.
I'm gonna have to look that up, because there are some ancient mounds and sites and things just south of the border in northern Florida.
Yeah, like I said, I've never read a spot where they talked about, you know, such a thing. They're using money here. You know, she's saying they didn't have to pay, which means, you know, to me that says some form of, you know, money must have, you know, could have been exchanged instead of, you know, trading or bartering. Usually they say, you know, they just gave them stuff. They didn't trade, they just gave, you know, but this says without money, without pay.
What year was this?
This would have been around 1530 or something like that. 1540. 1530, 40.
Well, the idea of pay might have come up from Mexico and other places.
It could have.
You know, as far as Indians talking, and you know, we had to give these sons of guns all kinds of stuff, and you know.
Yeah, and I get that, but a lot of times it always says, you know, they had a trade for blah blah blah, and you know, he wanted to trade for such and such for this, but they said no, and they just gave it to him. But this said pay. This is the only time I've ever seen the word pay used.
I'm with you.
And or men and women statues. So anyway, what happens is DeSoto gets there and he says, this isn't good enough. You're going to send me with some of your best people and I'm going to be protected. And you gave me all the provisions. Nope. So he grabs the princess up, puts her in chains, grabs a bunch of her people, and he marches her 300 miles for 3 weeks, treating her like a slave. After she'd done all this, and as she went through each village, the people would come out and they would carry things for her and help her out because they knew she was the princess, you know. And eventually, at some point or another, she manages to escape from the camp. And then she found, after about 2 or 3 weeks, she escapes from the camp. She found an opportunity, and from her brutal captors. Passing one day through thick woods, she suddenly darted from the train and disappeared. Pursuit was vain, and though Spaniards heard of her some days afterwards, she was fortunate enough to keep out of their way. Wow. And this terminates the account of the princess by declaring that she had possessed a truly noble soul and was worthy of an empire. Boy, oh boy. So anyway, this is how they went. You know, as he marched through, he took captives and stuff. Okay, so he's there. Next guy. This is Tuscaloosa, I guess, right?
Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, Tuscaloosa. Anyway, this guy he met up with him in the next territory. I would assume somewhere over by Louisiana. If we go back to the map, this would have been, so hers went over here from Florida all the way over, so it must have been in this area, I imagine, somewhere over here, maybe. I'm not sure exactly, or maybe over this way. But it was probably in this area, Tuscaloosa. But anyway, he heard this guy was big. Oops, yeah, too far. Tuscaloosa. This is the best picture I could find of him being. He was a big guy. His son, his whole tribe was big. They were like giants. Put it that way. He was tough too. He had heard of the ravages of the plunders committed by the Spaniards in their progress through the country and resolved to oppose them. He did not at first disclose his hostile designs, but dispatched his son to the frontier, which was peaceable, with a peaceable message, and offered to guide the Spaniards to his capital. He was going to lure him in. The son was nearly as tall as his father. De Soto received him civilly and sent him back with a present. Traveling 3 days, the Spaniards came to the town where Tuscaloosa held his court. They found the king sitting under a balcony in front of his house, which stood upon an emerus, affordable of delightful prospect of surrounding country. He was seated upon 2 cushions laid upon the carpet, and an attendant held by an umbrella of buckskin over his head to shield him from the sun. 100 of his chief men were present, dressed in rich fur robes, adorned with headdresses of colored plumes. Wow. One of De Soto's officers was with the squadron of horses, proceeded with the general and delivered a present to the king, and looked on in silence, casting his eyes upon the Spaniards, one after another, in a haughty and distasteful manner. So this guy, he knew. And Tuscaloosa got up, rose, and met him. They shook hands and the chief made a complimentary speech and offered to accompany the Spaniards in their march through his territories. He had other ideas. This is where it gets interesting. This tells you how
he
big
wanted to keep an eye on him.
Yes, he did. Tuscaloosa, who bore the reputation among his neighbors of being fierce and proud and turbulent. Yeah, because he's a big guy. Look at that. You don't want to get beaten by that guy, right? After resting 2 days in this place, the army recommenced its march. It was necessary to mount Tuscaloosa on horseback, but the Spaniards had great difficulty in finding an animal strong enough to carry him. This is how big this guy was. At length, one huge steed was found which he could bestride without dragging his feet on the ground. The army marched for 2 days and came to a broad river which they crossed with rafts of cane constructed by the Indians. Wow. You know how big you got to be to drag your feet on the ground with a horse? This guy
there are some horses that are shorter, but in general, yes.
I mean, I know, like, if I had a Shetland pony, and he was fair size Shetland pony, and I could touch the ground on one side or the other, but anything bigger than him, I couldn't touch the ground. But a fair horse, even the horse, they could have been riding small horses. Even so, 14-hand horse, I couldn't touch my feet to the ground, and I'm 6 foot tall. This guy had to be 8 feet tall at least, if not more. Put it that way. So he went with the Spaniards. He sent messages ahead to the next town. They went through these other places. This whole thing was to meet in Maudvilla, the modern Mobile, Alabama. You know where Mobile, Alabama is?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's where his territory was. Maudville, which is now Mobile. He sent one of his men ahead with notice of his approach, and told that the Spaniards were coming, and his message was to get ready to attack the strangers. Right? So the Indians were busily this is where it gets really interesting, because this is the only account of all these Indians before they were all destroyed, from disease and sickness and all these other things. So he gets there, he sends word ahead, and the Indians were fortifying the town, and armed men were arriving from all parts of the country. And the children had been removed, as well as the women, except those who were young and capable of fighting. Somehow De Soto got word of all of this, and he wished to avoid any over contact that might indicate his hostility and suspicion, and therefore merely gave warning to all his troops to be on their guard. They got to the town of Moldova, strongly fortified. It contained about 80. His troop contained about 80 horses, and these were of enormous size, or houses. It contained, listen to this. This was very interesting. It contained about 80 houses, but these were of enormous size, some of them being large enough to lodge 1,500 men, and the smallest 500. The army entered the town and were received with every show of rejoicing. Their horses were sent to the commodities place without the walls, and the men were entertained with dances and some beautiful females who, in Florida, were particularly skillful in this exercise. After this, the king and Soto fell into conversation, and Tuscaloosa requested the general to leave him and in this place. Okay, so these lodges, there's 80 of them that hold 1,500 men of this size. Can you imagine that? This is a lot of men. Here's DeSoto was famous. Look at, he even got on this is the United States $500 bill in 1918 edition, where they pictured DeSoto coming in to conquer the Indians. Believe it or not. Did you know that?
No.
He was on the $500 bill. On the
back. And to think that he went all the way to South Carolina, almost to Tennessee, and back down through Alabama to get to Mobile.
Yeah. Well, he didn't know. Okay. Now these Indians, this is best we can do with the Indians. They practice medicine. They were, you can see them smoking the peace pipe, doctoring other Indians. They weren't, by far, they weren't that savage. They were doing all the things that Europeans would do, only in Indian fashion. They collected food and vegetables, grew plants and animals. As you can see, these are goats or lizards or something. I don't know. This is probably the wrong one. They play games. Look at, they walk in tight ropes, gatherings, stuff like that. These were, they were humans having fun, living life. Okay. So you got, we'll go back to this one. And, this is what happens when you're the Spanish coming. What do you think happens? The Indians come and get you, and then you're Spanish, you come and get them.
Couple of headless people back there.
Yes, exactly. So here's the Spanish. They get to the thing, and as you notice, they use dogs to do the work. They had vicious dogs. These dogs, and the people didn't know what to think of this, because they've never seen vicious dogs like this before, or horses. So what happened with Moldova, the Spaniards got into town, and they threw them a big party, and at some point there or another, they were in the big council house, and one of the Spaniards come in. He told DeSoto was kind of going on, and all of a sudden somebody jumped up and said, let's see, it was delivered. One of the Indian chiefs rushed out of the council house with consignments and gestures full of indignation, and exclaimed to the Spaniard, "What robbers and vagabonds are these, and that dare talk to such a style the great Tuscaloosa, our sovereign, as if they were giving orders to a wretch like themselves by the sun and the moon? What can endure the insolence of such a pack of devils? Cut them to pieces. The infamous tyrants, this was the signal for the general attack. All the Indians rushed forth and fell upon the mass of Spaniards. Their horses were without outside of the town, and so judged it advisable to retreat until they could secure the animals, as the chief had the advantage they possessed over the enemies and was being mounted. The retreat, yeah, so the Spaniards had the advantage while on horseback. The retreat was accomplished by facing the enemy and slowly withdrawing, yet such clouds of arrows were discharged upon them that they suffered severely. The Indians pursued them beyond the walls, and in succeeding in killing several horses, they captured all the baggage of the Spaniards, knocked off the chains of the slaves. Oh yeah, when they went to Tuscaloosa there, they still had the slaves of the princess, and they freed them all. And they gave them weapons to fight with them. The Spaniards, however, had mounted their horses and ranged themselves in order to face for battle, and they made their head against their enemies, who could not stand the charge of the cavalry, but retreated into the town. The walls were provided with embraces, and at every 50 paces was a tower capable of containing 8 to 10 men. This was a castle, man. This was a town built like a castle with towers. What the heck? Covered by these fortifications, the Indians maintained their posts and poured such a shower of arrows and other missiles upon their assailants that they soon drove them to a distance from the walls. Most of the Indians we hear are they got grass huts. They don't have castles or forts or any of this stuff. But these guys, have walls. They don't have walls. This one did.
Not in.
These Indians had walls. This is like a whole, this is like a whole different type of Indian here. You know what I mean? So Soda changed his plane of attack, and he endeavored to decoy the Indians out of town by acting like he was retreating. He partially succeeded in his maneuvers, and the Indians suffered a considerable loss. The rear division of his army had now arrived, and a council of war was held. Some of the officers thought it too desperate of an attempt to continue the assault and advise a close siege to close the siege to the place. It was decided, however, to storm immediately. Go figure. Let's retreat. No, let's go right now. Siege it. The cavalry, being the best armed, were ordered to dismount, buckle their armor close around them, and stooping their heads to rush forward and burst open the gates. A terrible slaughter took place at first on the first onset, for the Indians defended the gates with the utmost obstinance. Several times were the Spaniards beaten back. At length, the gates were forced, and the Spaniards entered, pell-melling among the enemies. The new conflict now commenced in the streets, and the Indians took possession of the houses and held out. So these are quite the houses to be, holding out. This is no wigwam, that's for sure. This is no hut. This is a house where you can hold up. This is a log cabin house. Don't you agree?
Yeah, they're a lot more,
yeah,
defensible.
Yes, the Spaniards, overcome with thirst in the long contest battle, relieved themselves by drinking from the pool near the wall, but it contained as much blood as water. De Soto found it impossible to drive the Indians from their houses, and he resolved on the dreadful experience of setting fire to them. This was immediately done, and all the buildings, being all constructed of very inflammable materials, the whole town was at once in a blaze. The wretched natives attempted to save themselves by flight, but the cavalry surrounded the place and drove them back into the flames. In this last extremity, the Indians called on the females to come forward. A number of their heroines had not waited for the call, but had fought side by side with their husbands. Now, at the general summons, they rushed forward in one body against the Spaniard troops, who, ashamed to maintain to fight against women, it is said, and merely warded off their blows. In the end, however, the women were all dispersed, and those who did not perish in the flames escaped into the woods. Such was the dreadful battle of Moldova. The most singularly Indian fight that ever encountered in the territory of the United States. It lasted 9 hours, and 2,500 Indians were killed or burnt to death. This historian Vega even swells this amount to 11,000. The number of Spaniards who fell was only 18. 150 were wounded, and a number of wounds were amounted to 700. They lost all their baggage and pearls and valuable articles which they had collected during the whole expedition. Tuscaloosa was never heard of after the battle, having doubtless perished in the flames. His son was killed fighting, and his body was afterwards found. The Spaniards were so disheartened by their losses that they wished to abandon their enterprises, but De Soto could not endure the thought of returning to his country without some brilliant and successful achievement. He had such command over his followers as to prevent them from mutiny and encourage them to continue their march to the interior, from which was destined never to return. Tuscaloosa appears to have been highly famous in his day, and his memory long continued among the Indians of Florida, and indeed yet to be extinct. Tuscaloosa, the present capital of Florida, still preserves his name and points out the locality of his dominions. So go figure. City of giants and giant houses, 1,500 men in each house, and they burnt it all down. And say there was only half that many. I think that the amount of men in there might have been way over 2,500. That other guy might have been more right. Think of it, 80 houses that could hold 1,500 men, 1,500 to 500. Say each house had 500 men in it, right? And you burn them all down, that would be a lot of men.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, geez. But anyway, here's what the Spaniards did. They'd let their dogs out, kill the men. This is what the Indians probably look like. They're living in Florida. They don't have much worry for clothes. It's hot. Here's De Soto meeting with the Indians. This would have been, say, Viracocha. This is the picture I got for Viracocha, which is our next guy. They did a lot of, everything's watery. Here's that picture that was on the money. This is the swamps. Remember, he had to go through the swamps, and as he went through the swamps, the Indians would follow. Tuscaloosa, the Indian chieftain, Moldova, October 18th, 1540.
Now, what state is that in?
Florida, that would have been in Alabama, Mobile, where he got killed.
Right.
Tuscaloosa. But anyway, and they named the city in Florida after him. This is the Spaniards. See, this is why the Indians didn't have a chance.
No, I got to correct you. No, the capital of Florida is Tallahassee.
Tallahassee. But is there
Tuscaloosa, Alabama? They named cities after him in Alabama, but not so much in Florida. Okay.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I get my cities messed up. Yeah, because he was in Mobile in Moldova.
Because if you go back to the map, he went up through Tampa Bay and up the Hillsborough River and up through Florida, Hernando County, after Hernando De Soto used to live there, and up through Florida and South Georgia, and came right through where I live in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then went over to all the way up to Macon, and then over to South Carolina, up to North Georgia, and then back down. So when he got to Mobile, he had already been a great distance through, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and then Alabama would have been his fifth state. But then that's where he met these folks at Mobile.
Yeah.
I've not heard of that and living down here, you know, and being around, you know, you hear different stories and things and stuff, but you know, this is a new one for me.
Well, cool. We're all learning something. So Melvilla is Mobile, Alabama. So there you go. Yeah. So these Indians are shooting arrows at these guys, but they're all in armor. You know, the arrows are just bouncing off their armor. That's what protected them. I guess they killed a few of the horses, but you know, they were terrified because these guys got swords. You know, here's him meeting with the chieftains, you know, here's what's his name on the pillows with the thing. And when he shows up, look at that. That's quite impressive, you know? But anyway, there they are with the dogs. You know, I can't imagine being an Indian and all of a sudden a pack of dogs runs out. What do? You know, you're thinking these dogs were trained to hunt and kill. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, the Spanish would rush in and just have themselves a good fight. Yeah, kind of bad. Well, now we're going to go on to another one, a Florida guy, Vitacochu. Okay, another Floridian, the oldest of three brothers who divided the government of their tribe among them, three of them. Anyway, of course, Hernando de Soto arrived in Florida in 1539, and they found the three brothers living perfectly in harmony. Of course, he couldn't have that. You know, they were impressed with his horses again. He was searching everywhere. East Florida, he traveled to a great part of East Florida, southern Georgia, and Alabama, searching everywhere for gold, and almost everywhere encountering the hostilities of the natives. It doesn't sound like he antagonized them, or he made them hostile.
He ticked them off.
Yeah, in the course of his march, he came to a territory of Veracocha, which appears to have been situated on the streams which flow through the West Florida into the Gulf of Mexico. The first town he visited in this quarter was Ochille, on the frontier of the territory, consisting of 50 houses. The Indians here were not hostile, and no demonstrations against the Spaniards, yet De Soto did not hesitate to assault the place. The Indians, overcome with surprise at his attack, which was made early in the morning, of course, early in the morning, they're sleeping, let's attack the village. Astounded by the clangor, the Spanish drums and trumpets took instantly to flight. The town was captured, and many of the inhabitants were made prisoners, among whom Ochille, the brother of Veracocha. De Soto, having Ochille in his possession, made himself acquainted with the state of the country and persuaded his prisoner to send for Veracocha and the remaining brothers such exaggerated accounts. So he used one brother against the other to get the other one. Well, the Veracocha was smart. He made speeches. He was a good talker too. He said these country men, the Spaniards, are traitors, liars, robbers, and murderers, and the children of the devil. And they would be at home, mind their own. They should go home and mind their own business of roaming about, plundering and butchering my people who had done nothing to harm them.
He was right about that.
That's for sure. He told them, and then he told them if they dare to set foot in his territories, he would overwhelm them with such plagues and disasters as if had never been heard of before. He would poison the rivers and the lakes and the springs of water and the trees and the plants and the very air. He would command the mountains to fall upon their heads and the earth to open up and swallow them up. If they escaped all of these disasters and dangers, he would take them alive, boil one half of them, and roast the other half. Wow. If the Spaniards' writers had given us a faithful copy of the Manifesto of Floridian Chief, we must allow his eloquence reminds us rather of the pistol Julius Caesar. But he found himself at a crossroads. And they showed up, and here's Viracocha, and once Viracocha seen the Spaniards, he thought, these Spaniards are much more formidable than he imagined. And though it prudent to propose a term of peace, he started negotiations. He met De Soto on friendly terms and apologized for his insulting language he had used towards the Spaniards, and professed his entire willingness to submit his territory to their authority. He offered to supply them with provisions to whatever extent they might wish, and declared that he was solicitous only to them and their honor in service. De Soto received all these declarations and professed his desire to overlook what he had past done, and promised to render Viracocha and his people every service in his power, and declared that he would study not to be burdensome. A treaty of peace was forthwith concluded. And of course, the Spaniards marched into the capital of Viracocha, which contained above 200 large houses, besides a number of smaller buildings. Then they passed 5 days responding of their fatigues of the long march. But the crafty Viracocha, under the enterprises, under a veil of friendship, nursed the feelings toward the hatreds toward the Spaniards. So he made a plan. And on the 5th day, he instructed a number of his trusty messenger to proceed in different parts of his domain with orders to the effect: strong parties of warriors to assemble in different points of the neighborhood of the capital and secrete their arms in the woods. On the day appointed, they were to enter the town in irregular groups and with loads of wood and water and vegetables and other things, and use the Spaniards for the use of the Spaniards, and told themselves to be ready to fall upon them at any given signal. The messengers dispatched at Viracocha called together his bravest officers and laid the plot before them. They applauded his resolution and declared themselves ready to sacrifice their lives, if necessary, for the deliverance of their country. There you go. That was one where you could see the village burning. That was Moldova. Sorry, should have had that one earlier. So Viracocha made this plan to get rid of De Soto, and everything was working really good. In honor of he would bring the Spaniards in his battle. Viracocha was taken by surprise on his proposal. He would gladly have dispersed with the embarrassing honor and no presents for his decline, exposing himself to the dangerous suspicion. So the Spaniards were suspicioning of him. The peril of Viracocha was already greater than he imagined. Before the plot was ripe, it was betrayed. Somebody told one of the Indians. Of course, it always boils down to one of the Indians giving up the goods, and he was so worried about getting killed by the Spaniards. So he told the Spaniards what Viracocha was going to do. Oh, here's a picture of the giant Indian again. Sorry, I should have showed that one earlier. I wonder what he's got in the pot down there. Anyway, you notice that they're bringing cannons with them too. Horses, cannons, priests, meeting.
I have been through this area and up through middle Georgia in a vehicle driving, and I cannot imagine pulling a flipping cannon.
Well,
way. I mean, the terrain, the creeks and mud and trees and no roads. I mean, they pushed a can. Oh my God.
Yeah. I don't know how they did it, but cannon, chopping their way through. Who knows? So here we go with Viracocha and he assembled his warriors. But one of the Indians had, explained the plot to De Soto and his officers because he was afraid. And, and he made a counter plot to Viracocha's plan. So he sent his troops out, to town the town was skirted by a wide plain at one extremity, in which the high mountains covered with thick woods, and on their end of their plain there were two deep lakes. On the appointed day, the Indians appeared drawn up this plain between the mountains and the lakes. Their number amounted to 10,000. They were all chosen men and decked with tall plumes in their headdress, as so to make a very showy appearance. To prevent all suspicion on the part of the Spaniards, they exhibited no weapons, but they had their bows and arrows concealed in the tall grass close at hand. The Spanish troops marched out of town, every man being instructed to how to act according to the given signals. So Soto and Viracocha marched on foot at their head, and at certain spot Viracocha was given a signal for his men to snatch up their arms and rush upon the Spaniards. Just as they were approaching this spot, De Soto ordered a musket to be fired, on which signal 12 Spanish soldiers instantly surrounded the Indian chief and made him prisoner. They always take the chief prisoner. Doesn't that sound? They'll befriend him, and then the last thing they do is grab up the chief and hold him as prisoner.
Throw him in irons.
Yeah, and then of course the Indians, who at this moment had grasped their weapons and stood ready to make the assault, were struck with a sudden astonishment at the capture of their leader. But after wavering a moment, they set up a loud shout and rushed forward. De Soto sprang upon his horse and led the troops to the charge. Rushing with the most daring valor upon the ranks of the enemy, he was received with a shower of arrows, all aimed at his horse, a practice common to the Indians, who were not slow to perceiving that this immense advantage of the use of this animal gave to the Spaniards. 8 arrows pierced the body of the steed at first discharge, and he fell dead. De Soto fell on him, or with him, and was in extreme danger. But the Spanish cavalry instantly rushed forward and charged the ranks of the Indians. The squadron consisted of about 300 men, and such was the fury of their onset that the loose ranks of the natives were totally unable to withstand it. They broke, dispersed, and fled in every direction. Part of them saved themselves in the woods. 900, the flower of the army, who found themselves in the rear, could not escape except by throwing themselves into one of the lakes, which were the water was so deep that 4 feet from the bank it rose over their heads, and they were forced to swim. This is where it gets really interesting. The Spaniards chased the fugitives across the plain till the thick woods, by which they were skirted and prevented any further pursuit by their cavalry. They then surrounded the lake, where the remainder had taken refuge. The Indians refused to surrender, and the battle was continued the whole day with the greatest ease, and the Indians swimming about and locking themselves 3 to 4 together on the banks, of whom one stood upright and shot arrows at the Spaniards as long as they had any remaining. They hoped to make their escape in the darkness of the night, and not a man suffered himself to be taken prisoner. The Spaniards, however, surrounded the lake with their whole force, and there's 300 of them, remember, and kept up the vigilant watch throughout the night, and not an Indian could approach the shore. Remember, 900 Indians are in the water. This must have been a sight to see, you know. They couldn't approach the shore without being fired upon. Remember, they had guns. All this time, they continued calling upon them, offering pardon and good treatment if they would just surrender, and threatening certain death in cases of their refusal. 14 hours, the Indians remaining swimming in the lake, with stout hearts and unconquered determination to resist overtures or surrender. 14 hours of swimming. Oh my goodness. About 2 in the morning, finding themselves in the most miserable and exhausted state, half dead, with cold and fatigue, and sustaining themselves on the surface of the water. A few of them approached the shore, but most of these, after touching it, again plundered into the water, not yet willing to trust the promise of the Spaniards. They saw, however, that only a few had landed, were kindly treated, and others followed. At 10 in the morning, a body of 200 surrendered, and who had been in the water for 24 hours without touching land. They were nearly drowned and enormously swollen with the water they had taken in, yet were not told of any others that died in the consequences of their unparalleled suffering. So if you're in the water that long, you swell up, or you think it was from just drinking?
No, just think about being in a bathtub for too long and your skin starts to absorb the water. So
yeah. Well, eventually all the Indians came out. There was only a handful left. He pardoned them all, and the Spanish general begged him at the deed of the kindness to put them to death, but he did not. He suppressed the Spaniards now with the sanctuary. Well, let's see. So it assures that they had shed tears and admiration for the conduct of the brave Floridians. And De Soto, with his general, approved all of his band, allowed the 7 heroes to return free to their home. So the ones that held out the longest, the 7 that held out the longest, he let them go home. Notwithstanding the treachery of Viracocha, the Spanish commander judged it to be advisable to deal severely with him. At least the Indians who reserved their king should be again excited to hostility. He therefore, after reproaching Viracocha with his conduct, again admitted him to his friendship and promised to overlook what he had been done in the case of the chief, would in the future act upon those professions of fidelity which he had repeatedly made. Viracocha renewed his declarations with De Soto, entertained him at the table as formally as he could. Possibly this time the king might have been sincere with his wish for peace. Let's see. Embrace such matters. Okay. Viracocha, for purpose, he caught the prisoners and taken to the lake among the Spanish. Oh, well, anyway, Viracocha was one of the most formidable enemies in the invaders of Florida encountered in the course of their expedition. He had presidents been equal to his courage. The Spaniards might have found in him an astonishing sufficiency power to arrest their progress and spare them from a long train of suffering which closed their disastrous enterprise. So even with this huge army, Viracocha couldn't do it because he had horses, guns, cannons, and swords. And here you go.
And you know what else they had?
What?
Fear.
Fear, yeah. Because here you go. The few guys they had, you shooting arrows at them and they don't die. I mean, you're like, they got these giant animals and they just run over you and chop you up. Then they take you prisoner and make you carry their goods, and they treat you like crap. Here they are getting taken prisoner. And then if you aren't good, they let the dogs eat you. It's like,
and down here in the South, it's interesting that Hernando de Soto is looked upon as a hero.
Oh God, he was the last thing I'd expect as a hero. Look at it. If you, and of course, as he went, he made them all switch to Christianity too. And look at this. Here they are with their guns and stuff. You don't convert, would just put you at the stake and burn you. I mean, they leave out a lot of these details, but I've been researching this. It was terrible. I mean, you don't agree. And then here's another thing. They come in and you don't agree. They get the Indians, and what are they doing? They're pouring hot metal on them. They're beating them at the thing. They're making them work in the cave here, dig for some gold. Look at this, beating and killing them. This is terrible torture. And then you're not good. Look at, they hang you by your neck and set fire underneath them. And look at it in the back. You can see in the back there, here they are beating them, killing them too. This is terrible.
Yeah. Long live the Spanish.
Yeah. I mean, look at these guys. Bring them over here. I'll just swing my sword and chop them up. It gets worse. Look at this one. Let's hang them and chop their legs and the babies, and this is terrible. I mean, brutality. And look at, here's the priest there giving them last rites. Oh, you killed the kid, I'll give him the last rites. What? And again, the dogs and the little kids in his arms. This is terrible. Look at this one. This is even worse. They're just lining them up and chopping their noses. See, they're missing their noses. They chop their noses and their hands off. Can you imagine that? Come on up. Look at all the hands on the ground. We're going to chop your hand off. Chop your nose off. And if you try to get away, look at let the dogs eat them. Look at this guy here. He's pulling the nose off. Can you imagine what torture that is? I'm going to hold him steady. I'm pulling his nose right off his face. I mean, I can't even imagine this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's, I mean, can you imagine running around, no nose, no hands, no nothing? And there you go. Okay, you're pure now. You got no hands and no nose. Go have a good day. And
look at the dead bodies in the background on the hill.
Yeah, look at piles of them.
What are they doing on top? Zoom back out just a little. Oh, there you go. See?
They're pushing them off the hill or making them.
Yeah, whatever they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's terrible. And the dogs, here's the dogs just chewing on the people.
I mean, the idea that you would be that bloodthirsty.
Yeah, I mean.
And they called the American Indians savages.
Yeah. Who's a savage here? You know what this tells me? It tells me that if you go ahead and you're the inferior species or the inferior race or whatever it is, you're gonna pay the price. Like people always talk about, what the aliens come, they're gonna rescue us, they're gonna give us free energy and technology and help us, and yet maybe there are some aliens out there that might do that, but most aliens are going to be like, you're the Indians, you're savages, look at you, we're going to just chop you up, we're going to kill you off, we're going to take your resources, we're going to make you slaves. We don't care about you, we care about our race. You are not our race. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're not us. And people don't get it. They just don't get it. You're not us. You are an alien to us, and we could care less if you are, living, dying, whatever, because you're an alien. We don't care about you. And that's why people have all these things like the alien abducted me and they were pulling out stuff from my nose and they were doing operations and they were tagging me, because you know what? You're like a cow or a wild animal, and they're putting a tag on you because you don't matter. You're an animal, like a dog, a cow, a horse, and they're tagging you, and they don't care if you can talk or walk. You're an inferior species. All right. Oh, Lucky Smith's in the house. Let's see. Mary wins. Dogs are as large. Well, yeah. Pa Joe, thank you for coming. Max Vision remote view class. Don't forget to join me over at Smoking G Sharp tomorrow night with Max Vision. We will be over there talking about Antarctica at 8 p.m. Central Time. Okay, what do we got for us tonight? What good story?
Well, I'm trying to find, my memory is bad. And I've been trying to find stories, that we haven't done before. But which is this 50 or 51?
51.
51.
Yeah. Oh, there's Max Vision. Gotta go, he says. Good night. Good night, Max. Scotty Boy's in the house. Oh, let's see. Yeah. It's probably a late night for all of you people. But I'll see you tomorrow night, Max. And don't forget, people, go over to Nina the Mystic. She's having Halloween's costume party on Sunday, I believe it is. Yes, Sunday. And we're going to be over there all dressed up and ready to go for Halloween. And don't forget to check out Amber Dawn's channel. She will be having some kind of Halloween party on Thursday night too. So go check out Amber Dawn too. Amber Dawn Rising. She will be having a Halloween show on Thursday, I've been found out. And we're going to have her on too as a guest soon for a short. Let's see what else is there. But Nina is going to have her big costume party. Go over there, buy some tickets. It's a lot of fun. Dress up. You get a free ticket for dressing up, and you don't have to do much. Just put on a hat, put some makeup on, something like that. You know, it's real easy. Put an egg carton on your head and call it a boat. You're a boatman or an egg man, whatever. Anyway. Oh, it's a slow night tonight. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed it. 3 Indians. I knocked out 3 of them in one shot. But I did get some new books this week. I got a cool new book. You'll like this one. Look at that. North American Indians. That was a good book. And I got this book, and it's as thick as can be. Look how thick that book is.
Wow.
Mystic Warriors of the Plains. I got them on eBay. I got them for a song too. Whew. But anyway, yeah. It was a lot of fun. Lucky Smith is in the house. While foraging, he's discovered healthy food has a toxic look alike, always wondering if some natives use this to their advantage. Sick soldiers don't fight well. Yeah, I always wondered, how come the Indians just didn't poison the Spaniards when they were feeding them? They could have just as easily poisoned them with some hemlock or something. You know, they had to have some sort of poison, right?
Or
that's
something.
What, you know what? You know, the thing is, the Indians were bad planners, because when the Spaniards were all in the city, the Indians could have took all those horses and ran away with them, you know, and then the Spaniards would have had no horses and they would have been defenseless. That's what I would have done. If I was the Indians, I would have took all their horses and I would have tried to poison them. I would have got a few of them. Somebody would have ate some food. Didn't seem like they were concerned. You know what I'm saying? Mary Wins is in the house.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would have tried would have been to try to, you know, get them in the middle of the night or steal some of their steel weapons, or to try to equalize, you know, steal their guns, steal the gunpowder. I mean, you know, and with all of the shooting that they'd done or whatever, they only had so many lead balls. I mean, they're shooting muskets.
Yeah.
So, and they've only got so much gunpowder.
Yep.
That they're carrying. So they might have been able to shoot, but if there was 20,000 Indians, they did not have 20,000 rounds.
No, but yet it's, you know,
they had their horses and their swords, which was very effective. But I just want to point out that for as long as DeSoto went around, they still only had so much, so many lead balls, and so everybody had so much gunpowder for their muskets and that kind of thing, because those were flintlock type muskets back in those days. So you know, they had to load them up, they had to pour, you know, down in the thing, had to stuff them. I mean, you know,
Oh yeah.
So they were the crudest of weapons at best.
Oh yeah. But I mean, I can't imagine, being there and that, you got, say, 20 soldiers with guns and they all fire. I mean, at close range, I'll say a 50 caliber bullet or whatever, that would go through one Indian, maybe get two or three,
Yeah,
or at
depending
least
on how close they were, and if nothing else, it scared the crud right out of them.
Oh yeah. I mean, considering that these Indians never heard loud weapons or anything loud before. Because I mean, what is the loudest thing you can make in the woods? Maybe a tree falling. I mean, you got to figure back in those days, things were quiet. You could hear the birds chirping and the whippoorwills whipping and the woodpeckers pecking and everything that moved, the little bugs. But all of a sudden you got guns going off. I mean, gun is loud now. I can hear when the neighbor shoots off a gun a half a mile away. But all of a sudden you got a black powder gun, kapow, or a cannon, boom, it would shake the earth. And it's enough to scare the living bejesus out of you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And with that, I would say, it's the fear. And if you're standing there ready to fight, you're an Indian, you got your bow and you're shooting your arrows at them and nothing is happening, they're not dying. You're thinking, oh my God, they're immortal. You know what I'm saying? I can't kill you. I hit you with my stick and it just hits your armor. Boing, boing, click, 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 boing, because you got a group of Spaniards and they're fighting 10,000 men. And when at the end of the day, you lose two guys and they lose hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men. Or like that first battle of Moldova, they lose 3 or 4, 18 Spaniards, it said 18 of them got killed. And, thousands of 2,500 of the Indians died, just crazy. But I thought it was fascinating because all that culture was lost when DeSoto came through because he destroyed their cities. He destroyed the people, and in his wake, he left pestilence. He left, it says, more devastating the battles were the diseases carried by the members of the expedition because they lacked immunity to Eurasian diseases. The indigenous people suffered epidemics of illness that contracted infectious diseases such as measles, smallpox, and chickenpox. Several areas of the expedition crossed became depopulated by disease caused by contact with Europeans. Many natives fled the populated areas that had been struck with illness for the surrounding hills and swamps in some areas. The social structure changed because the population lost due to epidemics. The records of the expedition contributed greatly to European knowledge about the geography, biology, and the ethnology of the New World. The DeSoto expedition descriptions of North American natives are the earliest known sources of information about the societies in the Southwest. They are the only European descriptions of the North American natives' habits before the natives encountered other Europeans. DeSoto's men were both the first and nearly the last Europeans to witness the Mississippian culture. DeSoto's expedition led the Spanish crown to reconsider Spain's attitude towards the colonies north of Mexico. He claimed large parts of North America for Spain. The Spanish concentrated their missions in the state of Florida and along the Pacific coast. Wow. DeSoto has a state park in Alabama, DeSoto County, Florida, Hernando County, Florida, DeSoto Park in St. Petersburg, Florida, DeSoto Falls in Lupkin County, Georgia, DeSoto County, Mississippi, and Hernando is its county seat. DeSoto, Missouri, DeSoto Hilton Hotel, Savannah, Georgia, DeSoto National Memorial in Brandon, Florida, and DeSoto School is a private school in Helena, Arkansas. DeSoto automobile line developed by Chrysler Corporation, and Hernando DeSoto Bridge, which carries Interstate 40 across the Mississippi River at Memphis, Tennessee. Wow. There you go. So where am I going tonight?
I have had trouble today looking for the right story.
Yeah.
And I have been led to this one, which I think I've read before,
Okay.
but it's White Buffalo Woman.
Yeah, we read White Buffalo Woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember doing a short on that. That's how I remember. I got a lot of shorts. You got a lot out there. I was really surprised. You know, because every time you read one, I capture. If you haven't noticed, I make a little short out of it, so people can just listen to the story later on. It's always good. Oh yeah. But anyway, I tell you, that guy ruined it. You know, he destroyed a whole culture, literally wiping the Indians from the map in those areas. And it sounds like they had an interesting culture, you know, of leaders, you know, like, here's my kingdom, you know, we have statues, and we use money, and we have forts, and we have not one guy or 10 guys. I can muster an army of 10,000 Indians. Can you imagine that? I mean, even when like Red Cloud and Sitting Bull would get their men together, I mean, if you had 1,000 or 2,000, I think like Custer's Last Stand, they had a big record of like 6,000 Indians there. And that was like a huge amount of Indians that were gathered together. This was like, I can snap my fingers and I'll have 10,000 men here to fight you. You know, I mean, those numbers are unheard of. You know what I'm saying? It's just crazy.
Right.
Yeah, crazy numbers.
Well, and living down here in the South, there's a couple of things I'll do a little bit more research, because I live in an area where he might have literally walked up the trail near my house.
Wow. Well, that's pretty cool. There.
Well, go to page 355. I'm going to do a couple of little shorts, and if I've repeated myself,
I'll let you know.
tonight I'm having issues finding, you know,
okay.
I think it's hard to believe, because I've scanned this
Yeah.
this book over 51 times now.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it amazing? We're gonna have to get a new book. I sent you some other books that on
Yeah,
the
they're on a stick.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm gonna have to start going through them more often. I've gone through them and nothing's just really like jumped out at me.
There, Coyote takes water from the frog people.
Yep.
All right. We're on it.
So there's a couple of short ones in here about Coyote, and it just seems that Coyote's been on my brain, you know.
Yep.
For whatever reason.
Yep.
So we'll make these short, and if we've done them before or not, you know, you can still make a short out of them. So
yeah. Well, Coyote takes water from the frog people. I do not have.
Oh,
this is new. This is definitely a new one.
Oh, let me get a little. I've got several pages kind of marked here. Hang on a sec. I can get something to drink. And we thank you all for coming and hanging out with us.
Mm-hmm. Now in the future, and which will soon be the past.
3, 2, 1. Coyote takes water from the frog people, from the Kalapuya tribe or nation. Coyote was out hunting and he found a dead deer. One of the deer's rib bones looked just like a big dentalia shell. And Coyote picked it up and took it with him. He went up to see the frog people. The frog people had all the water. When anyone wanted any water to drink or to cook with or to wash, they had to go and get it from the frog people. Coyote came up. Hey, frog people, I have a big dentalia shell. I want a big drink of water. I want to drink for a long time. Give us that shell, said the frog people, and you can drink all you want. Coyote gave them the shell and began drinking. The water was behind a large dam where Coyote drank. I'm going to keep my head down for a long time, said Coyote, because I'm really thirsty. Don't worry about me. Okay, we won't worry, said the frog people. Coyote began drinking. He drank for a long time. Finally, one of the frog people said, Hey, Coyote, you sure are drinking a lot of water there. What are you doing that for? Coyote brought his head up out of the water. I'm thirsty. Oh. After a while, one of the frog people said, Coyote, you sure are drinking a lot. Maybe you better give us another shell. Just let me finish this drink, said Coyote, putting his head back down under the water. The frog people wondered how a person could drink so much water. They didn't like this. They thought Coyote might be doing something. Coyote was digging out under the dam all the time he had his head under the water. When he had finished, he stood up and said, That was a good drink. That was just what I needed. Then the dam collapsed, and the water went out into the valley and made the creeks and the rivers and the waterfalls. The frog people were very angry. You've taken all the water, Coyote. It's not right that one people have all the water. Now it is where everyone can have it. Coyote did that. Now anyone can go down to the river and get a drink of water, or some water to cook with, or just swim around. Told by Barry Lopez in 1977. Now, if we skip ahead, I'm not sure if I read this one before, and it's on 359. Coyote fights a lump of pitch.
Let's see. Hang on. You think lump of pitch? I don't think so.
Now, Coyote fights a lump of pitch is a similar story in about where Brer Rabbit fights the tar baby, which is basically pitch, tar, and he gets stuck to the baby, okay?
Yep.
So, but anyway, and the tar baby was stolen from the Indians, by the way. So just, I wanted to point that out before we started. But anyway,
Okay.
Coyote fights a lump of pitch. White Mountain Apache. Even long ago, when our tribe and animals and birds lived together near white people, Coyote was always in trouble. He would visit among the camps, staying in one for a while and then moving on. And when he stayed at Bear's camp, he used to go over at night to a white man's fields and steal ears off the wheat. When the white man who owned the farm found out what Coyote was up to, he trailed him long enough to locate his path into the field. Then he called out all the white men to go to a council, and they made a figure of pitch, just like a man, and placed it in Coyote's path. That night, when Coyote went back to steal wheat again, he saw the pitch man standing there. Thinking it was a real person, he said, "Gray Eyes." He always talked like a Chiricahua Apache. "Get to one side and let me by. I just want a little wheat. Get over, I tell you." The pitch man stayed where he was. "If you don't move," Coyote said, "you'll get my fist in your face. Wherever I go on this earth, if I hit a man with my fist, it kills him." The pitch man never stirred. "All right, then I'm going to hit you." Coyote struck out, but his fist stuck fast in the pitch, clear to his elbow. "What's the matter?" Coyote cried. "Why have you caught my hand? Turn loose or you'll get my other fist. If I hit a man with that one, it knocks all his wits out." And then Coyote punched him with his other fist, and this arm got stuck in the pitch also. Now he was standing on his two hind legs. "I'm going to kick you if you keep holding me, and I'll knock you over." Coyote delivered a powerful kick, and his leg went right into the pitch and stuck. "This other leg is worse still, and you're going to get it," he said. He kicked, and his leg stuck into the pitch. Now, Coyote's legs were fast in the pitch. Only his tail was free. "If I whip you with my tail, I will cut you in two. So turn me loose." But the pitch man just stood there. Coyote lashed the pitch with his tail and got it stuck also. Only his head was free, and he was still talking with it. "Why do you hold me this way? I'll bite you in the neck and kill you, so you'd better turn me loose." And then when the pitch did nothing, Coyote bit it and got his mouth stuck, and there he was. In the morning, the farmer put a chain around Coyote's neck, took him out of the pitch, and led him to the house. "This is the one who's been stealing from me," he said to his family. The white people held a meeting to discuss what they should do with Coyote. They decided to put him into a pot of boiling water and scald him. So they set the water on to heat and tied Coyote up at the side of the house. Pretty soon, Coyote saw Gray Fox coming along, loafing around the farmer's yard, looking for something to steal from the white man. Coyote called him over. "My cousin," he said, "there are lots of things cooking for me in that pot," though of course the pot was only heating water to scald him. "There are potatoes, coffee, bread, and all kinds of food for me. It'll soon be done, and the white people are going to bring them to me." You and I can eat them together, but you must help me first. Can you put this chain around your neck while I go and urinate behind that bush? Fox agreed, and taking the chain off Coyote, put it on his own neck. As soon as Coyote was out of sight behind the bush, he ran off. After a while, the water was good and hot. The white men came out to Gray Fox. He seemed so little. What happened? He must have shrunk, I guess, they said. They lifted him up and threw him in the pot. Now the hot water boiled his hair right off, leaving Gray Fox bright red and hairless. They took off the chain and threw him under a tree, where he lay motionless until evening. When it got dark and cold, he woke up and started off. After a while, Gray Fox came to Bear's camp and asked, "Where is Coyote?" Bear replied that Coyote always went for his water to some spring above Bear's camp at midnight. So Gray Fox ran off to the spring and hid himself. Now at midnight Coyote came as usual to the spring, but when he put his head to the water to drink, Gray Fox jumped him. "Now I'm going to kill you and eat you," the fox said. The moon was shining from the sky down into the water, and Coyote, pointing to its reflection, replied, "Don't talk like that when we can both eat this delicious ash bread down there. All we have to do is drink all the water, and we can take the bread out and have a feast." They both started to lap up the water, but soon Coyote was merely pretending to drink. Gray Fox drank lots, and when he was full, he got cold. And then Coyote said, "My cousin, some white people left a camp over here, and I'm going to look for some old rags or quilts to warm you up in. Wait for me." So Coyote started off, and as soon as he was out of sight, he ran away. Based on Greenville Goodwin's version of 1939. Coyote was just a pain in the catucus.
He was a shyster, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, sometimes he's the creator, and sometimes he's the trickster. And it just seems like in that particular story, some other folks almost got the better of him. You know what I mean?
This is true.
So
this is true. Coyote never lets anybody get the best of him, I swear. Not very often. David Castle's in the house.
And good evening to all of you. And for those of you who want a card pulled, I got them here. So y'all collectively think of whatever it is you collectively want to think about.
Yeah, she just got up. Chloe's in the house. Hey, Chloe, how you doing? Let's see. Kind of a small crowd tonight, but that's all right. We do it good anyway. Whichever way it comes up, we're good. Doesn't matter to us because you know what? Somebody will watch it later. And we just enjoy doing it. At least I do. I enjoy doing the show.
Yep.
It makes my day. I love studying about the Indians. Sometimes I study way too much.
And you know, the more we find out and the more detail, and like in the pictures and stuff where they're cutting off their hands.
Yeah.
You know, now, are the people back in the day, are they like, "Oh, look, them Spaniards, they was right on," you know?
Yeah.
They was, "Oh, look, they were chopping their hands off and teaching them a lesson." I mean, so what were the people's, my curiosity is, what were the people's reactions who saw those pictures back in those days? Or might have, well, what really happened? Well, did they think of them as savages, the people who read about them? When they found out that DeSoto, did all these things and killed all these people. And so I wonder what the people's opinions were back then.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I mean, were they just saying, "Ooh, I'm a European and I come here and I'm reading this book and they're savages, they're uncouth. They didn't believe in God and this was what they deserved, because they were barbarians."
Christian.
Yeah, they weren't Christians, so they don't matter. And I think that has a lot to do with things. A lot was done in the name of Christianity, and the guys doing it were heralded as heroes. I mean, yeah, we went there and we killed 10,000 people because, they weren't Christians, so they really didn't matter. They didn't believe in God, so they didn't matter. They were just barbarians. So big deal,
Yep.
It's like, what? You went out and killed, look at, what was his name? It killed the Inca guys, and he killed how many thousands that day? And, I mean, these guys were heroes. They made the chief give up his religion and swear him to Christianity and baptized him in the name of the church and Jesus and all of that other good stuff, and then burned him at the stake.
The conquering heroes, they went over and conquered, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So today's card is Beaver, a number 22, which is Builder.
I like Beaver. Beaver's good.
Beaver, teach me to build my dreams, including others too. One mind, one thought, hearts as one, lessons learned from you. Beaver is the builder. Beaver is the doer in the animal kingdom. Beaver medicine is akin to water and earth energy, which is interesting because I just read story about the coyote and the frogs who loose the water. But anyway, so then I get beaver. Anyway, if you were to look at the dams and that block the woodland streams, you will find several entrances and exits. In building its home, beaver always leaves itself many alternative escape routes. This practice is a lesson to all of us to not paint ourselves into corners. If we eliminate our alternatives, we dam the flow of experience in our lives. I always find this important. If we eliminate our alternatives, we dam the flow of experience in our lives. A doer is characterized by industriousness, and Beaver knows that limitation cancels productivity. Beaver is armed with very sharp teeth that are capable of felling whole trees. Imagine what those trees could do to the limbs of predators. From the rear, Beaver is armed with a paddle-like tail that aids in swimming as well as guarding its rear end. To understand beaver medicine, you might take a look at the power of working and attaining a sense of achievement. In building a dam, a dream, teamwork is necessary. To accomplish a goal with others involves teamwork is necessary. To accomplish a goal with others involves working with the group mind. Group mind constitutes harmony of the highest order without individual egos getting in the way. Each partner in the project honors the talents and the abilities of the others and knows how to complete the piece of the puzzle that belongs to them. In working well with others, a sense of community is achieved and unity ensues. One beaver doesn't tell another beaver how to chew the bark off and to drop a tree. They just do. If beaver has appeared in your spread, it may be time to put your idea into action or to complete some project that has been neglected. The beaver card could be asking you to settle differences with fellow workers or friends, other beavers. Beaver tells you to look for alternative solutions to life's challenges and to protect the creative skills which you put your love and energy to. Sometimes Beaver brings you a warning to watch your back. If this is your message, you will know it by the position. Well, the card was just up. So anyway, there's the Beaver card. So builder, the builder of dreams, the builder of faith, the builder, what do you want to build? You don't have to be building a dam, but we in this community of people, on my channel, on this channel, we are builders because we want to build a bridge between us. We want to, learn things. We don't want to paint in ourselves into a corner. We want to discuss alternatives and other lifestyles and the way the old timers did it. And let's not repeat the same mistakes our elders and ancestors made.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, we are builders. We are beavers in our own rights, but, it's building in different ways. So I look at beaver, let's continue to build our friendships and our spiritual bonds, with each other and with the universe,
Oh, yeah.
So sue me.
No, I like it. We've had beaver quite a few times. It's kind of like telling us something, build for the future, build bonds. That's the thing I'm lacking out here in North Dakota is bonds with other people. Try to make friends, but everybody's working all the time, and I'm working all the time, so I don't have a lot of time to make friends or things like that. So it's kind of a lonely place to be.
Yeah.
Even though there's people, everybody's just too busy to get together or spend time or do things like I used to do when I lived in Wisconsin. And I tell you, when I was poor and I didn't work much or I didn't have a real good job, I had time to do things and go places. And even though I didn't have any money, I hung out with friends. We played cards or we just go watch a movie or hang out and around a campfire, because we didn't have anything to do. We could stay up a little late at night and do things. Now I got to work all the time. And so does anybody I know. So there's no campfires. There's no hanging out. There's no going to a movie. There's no doing any of those things because everybody's busy.
Right.
It's kind of sad. Now I have more money to do those things, to, go to a movie and to go to dinner or have a vehicle to get those places. But now there's nobody to do it with. So I traded one for the other. It's kind of hits me sometimes. And I just go, wow, but can I go back? Can I go back to being poor? I don't know. It'd be really hard, I mean,
but you can plan for future events to where you're not working all the time and you've got enough money or resources so that, do that.
I know. I think about it. I think, I'll have time when I, do this or that. I don't know. It seems like I focus on work, and I know there's going to come a day when I might not have work or something, but I should be very thankful I have a job, and I am thankful I have a job and a good job at that. So, I wouldn't probably be here on YouTube if I didn't, afford the internet and afford a computer and afford all these things that make this show go round. I mean, it's expensive. I got all these programs to make videos and things, and the nice computers so that I can have a green screen in the background and internet, none of that's cheap, people. It's expensive.
Nope.
Yeah. How about off-grid living? That's what Mossy Man's. Yes, I would love to do some off-grid living. I would love to buy a little chunk of land in like South Dakota or maybe even Montana and just build a cabin and live off-grid. That would be the ultimate goal. Yeah.
It
Anybody
ain't
fix
as
me up?
easy as you think.
No.
My electricity bill's $50 a month, and that's pretty off-grid.
Yeah.
But I also have a landline, so I can have the privilege to be able to do a live streaming and stuff, and that costs me a good chunk of change every month.
Yeah.
But I can watch movies, I can explore the internet, I can talk to people on the other side of the planet. So I mean, okay, that's all right.
Kind of justifies it, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it connects me with you and other folks and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And in my old age, I find that that's important. Not only do I talk with folks, but that I get to interact with other people. It's just not me. But without that though, but to the point though, yeah, it costs me a good chunk of change. It's over $100 a month.
Yeah, and that's something how your internet and stuff can be more than what your electric bill is.
And it is. It's almost 3 times my electric bill, depending on the month.
Yeah.
And so it's like, when you're on limited income, you kind of look at stuff and go, well, is this necessary? Well, I have made it a necessary part of my life, but at roughly $150 a month. Now I have really good DSL speed. I don't have dial up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we planned this years ago, and thank goodness I have enough hard phone line, because I'm 400 feet from the road.
Yeah.
I'm not right up on the highway or whatever. So, but the fact that I have such a good connection most of the time, you got to pay for it. I mean, I don't have any other way to put it, but if you want it, you got to pay for it.
Yeah. Mossy Man says his phone is $175 a month and his internet is $82. Wow. And he needs a cell phone for work. Yeah, of course. And he pays $1,800 a month in rent. Holy cow, man. You better have a damn good job.
Yeah, and I only make $1,100 a month, so. But so, my plans for the future included paying for this property.
Mm-hmm.
So, for anybody, if you're wondering about the future, I don't care if it's a lot somewhere, buy you a piece of property and make sure that it's paid for, because if you've got a place to go, you can put up a shack, you can build a cardboard house, you can make a tent. I mean, but if you ain't got a place to go,
yeah, you're screwed.
Regardless of everything else. Yeah. I mean, I've scrapped and scraped and saved and, scrounged for stuff over the years. But if you ain't got a place that you can go without somebody kicking you off.
Yeah, well, that land that you got is your saving grace, because, that's the thing too, is like, these people are paying, can you imagine making your $1,100 and then you're renting and the guy says, yeah, well, your rent is $850. We're raising it up, $850. What do you do? You're like, where do you go? What do you eat this month?
Right. My sister down in Dade City, Florida, she's like, David, she goes, they raised my lot rent this month.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, a couple of dollars. And I find out, now she was paying a little over $200 a month for, it's this little tiny lot.
Yeah.
And she passed to pay her own electricity and so forth. But I think her, sewers included.
Mm-hmm.
But they went to over $300. They added a tacked another $100 onto her lot rent. She goes, "Where am I going to go?" She lost her job at Walmart. She's retired. She's 66 years old or 67.
Mm-hmm.
And so what am I going to do? I can't move my trailer. I don't know where I would put it. Just so she's got to suck it up and pay another $100 a month. Now, that's not as bad as other people, but when you're on limited income like we are, that $100 a month is a screaming load full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Mossy Man says he has 2 acres of land in New Mexico. It's paid off. Well, good for you. I wish I had 2 acres of land in South Dakota or Montana.
2 acres of land almost anywhere. If it's yours and paid for, that it's a big deal. And depending on what's on it or what you got going with it, make sure you can get water, because shelter, you can sleep out in the open if you have to, but
always get a camper trailer and park it and live out of that for a little while anyway.
That's how I when I first moved down here. Let's see, I don't know if this will show up.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
All right, I'm sitting in one part of this original section. You see the travel trailer behind it?
Yep.
That's what I first homestead in down here. And there wasn't nothing. It was an old wheat field. And that part of the house that you can see there was a recycled tobacco barn.
Wow.
And there's still recycled tobacco barn here in the house. So you want a homestead, there are ways to do it. You can do it cheap. You can,
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard work. I mean, it still, after all these years, I'm still homesteading.
Mossy Man says, how's the price of land in North Dakota? Well, if you're not in the oil field, it's not too bad. But if you're in the oil field area, it's like crazy prices, which is keeping me from buying land, because I would just like to buy a little piece of land here. But if I drive like 2 or 3 hours away, land gets like, a third of the price or less. And I don't, it's too far away to drive to work that way. But it makes it really hard, because anything in this town, because of the oil, is like crazy price.
What's a crazy price for an acre of land?
Well, I've looked at some trailer houses, on a couple acres of land for 250, 300,000. Yeah. Which is, that's a lot of money for an old trailer house I looked at one, the trailer house was like an 82, and it was on 11 acres of land, and they wanted 220,000 for it. And it's like 10 miles out of town, but there's nothing there. It's kind of flat and in kind of like a low area. It's kind of swampy there. And I'm like, but the trailer, no bank in the world is going to give you any money for a 1982 mobile home. They're going to look at it and go, well, you got 11 acres of land. You better put a big down payment on that. What I'm saying? And I'm thinking, well, I guess that ain't too bad of a price, but now you're quite a way, I don't want to be too far away from my job, but then again, I don't want a 1982 trailer and then pay on it for the next 20 years and then think that when I'm 20 more years, I'll be too old to build a house. I don't want to build a house then. Piss on it. Trailer on 1 acre is about 780,000 here in LA County. Wow. I see. You got to make a really good wage for that or something. That's just ridiculous. There's no amount of land or no trailer house or nothing that's worth that much money. It's just not. I don't, like a 2000 model. Yeah. It's just not worth that. I would rather buy. I've seen houses out here in some of these little towns for like $30,000. For 50. I looked at a place for 50. I know where there was one in Richardson for like $30,000 or 35. I can't remember. And I looked at one. It was a trailer house on a lot in Halliday, which is a really little bitty town, but it had a garage and stuff for like 50,000. And so not that I want to live in town, but there's places outside of town too. And I would just like to get a little place like that, pay 40, 50, 60,000, and just have something, and then I could build on it or improve it or something. I don't want to go through all the hassle of, I don't want to buy a $500, $600, $700,000 house and pay enormous amounts of payments. It's just me and the dogs. Yeah. Come here. Come on. You want to come up here? Come on. Everybody wants to see you. Come on. Oh, there you go. There's the puppy. She's like, oh. But anyhow, yeah. Not that she ain't worth it, but you want a treat? You want a treat? Oh, look at, she just loves her treats. But to get a place like that. I mean, right now with the interest rates, if I bought a house for 350,000, which you can find a pretty decent place around here for 350,000, but then by the time I pay it off, I've paid almost $850,000 on it.
Right.
And I don't want to pay $850,000, work my life. I don't want to be a debt slave. I'd rather stay in this little place, this crappy little place, pay very little rent. I pay like $650 a month, which ain't too bad. And then save up my money and then go buy one of those places, or have a really small mortgage on, 40 or 50,000, after I put a huge down payment down. And then voila, when I retire or I quit, I already got a place that's pretty much paid off. And then I'm like you, I can retire and live on my whatever I get, and not have to worry about paying that mortgage, because that's what'll kill you. Pay the taxes.
Yeah. And for folks that I know that are retired and that are renting because for whatever reason they I know folks who lost their house back in the mortgage thingy, and when the banks foreclosed, and so now they're at the behest of the person that they're renting from.
Yes.
So it's an older model double wide that is declining anyway.
Yeah.
And now because of whatever, the person who the rentee, the landlord. Yeah, there you go. We're gonna, next year we're gonna go up $100. Well, it ain't worth what it's worth now as far as the person renting.
Yeah.
But now what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
And now they have degraded themselves 3 times because of the market. And because they're both retired, they can't afford any increase. And so they either have to suffer the increase somehow, or go to a single wide, really even crappier trailer that's cheaper. I mean, so they're, and I'm so glad that I made my decision and have been camping out down here,
Yeah, exactly.
So if anything, I can tell anybody younger, find a place. If it's an acre somewhere, pay it off, because you can always go sleep in your car. I mean, just pay it off. Have some place to go, for God's sakes. Just that. Oh well.
Yeah, Mossy Man says he's looking at some land in Arizona, 5 acres for 20,000. Yeah, I've looked at those ads and seen those properties and to bid on for like that 5 acres for 20. I thought there's some land in Wyoming like that too, where it's like 40 acres for, 30,000 or 20,000. And I thought, boy, I mean, just like you said, if you need to, you go there and I got a place to live, put your camper trailer up for a little bit and call it a day. I mean, at least you got some place to go where they can't look at you and say, get out of here. You don't belong. Well, I got the deed right here. It's mine, try to kick me off. Like here, the nice thing here, the taxes are really cheap. And let's see, so taxes are cheap here. So if I bought something here, I wouldn't be killed on the taxes. Like Wisconsin and Illinois. I got a friend that lives in Wisconsin, and he bought a $30,000 house, and his taxes, he pays more in taxes than he does his house payment. It's like,
Right.
wow. And I got friends that live in Wisconsin, and my parents live there, and all of those people in Wisconsin, oh my God, the amount of money they pay in taxes every year is like paying extra rent.
Yeah. Now I just got my tax statement in the mail, and it's I don't know if it was last year maybe, but the year before it was $425 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I complained.
Mm-hmm.
And last year I think there was a drop, and this year it's official, it's $375 for the year.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been saving up a little bit here and there, every month, and the heart attack kind of threw things in a quandary.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been able to recover from that enough to where I've got that $375.
Mm-hmm.
It's due by December. But so it's like, but that's my yearly rent that I
Mm-hmm.
pay to the government to leave me the F alone.
Yeah.
Here it's like paying the king. Here you
Yep.
go. Here's my dues. And yeah, well, did all the peasants pay? Yeah, okay, leave them alone.
The thing is that, like, if you have taxes that are that much, you could beg, borrow, and plead from people that would give you money that you could cover that. You know what I mean? Whereas if your taxes were, say, $5,000, and
I'd be out of it.
Oh yeah, you'd look at them. There's no way you could call your friend up and say, I need to pay my taxes. I'm a little short. Can you borrow me $5,000?
Yeah.
You'd be like, can't afford that. I can give you a couple $100, or something, but you want $5,000. What the hell?
Years ago, I was helping a bunch of other folks out who were living on the property for free. And that year, I just spent a lot of money on trying to feed other people and do some other stuff. And I was not doing so well in handling my money, because I'd come from a job to where I was making a little over 40,000 a year, which ain't a lot. But for me, I was getting by really nice. But anyway, so I went from that to zero, and almost lost the property due to non-payment of taxes. I was late.
Yeah.
And God bless the folks and friends that I know, they came up with enough money and paid my taxes. A friend of mine called me on the phone and said, listen, my mama passed away and she loved you and this, that, the other thing, and she would just absolutely, she left me enough money that I can pay for your taxes, and it ain't going to stress me at all. And for you to lose your property, she would just haunt me from the grave. And he said, it's already paid for. I called him up and paid for it over the phone. Your taxes are paid. And I cried for 2 days. I was like, man, because I didn't ask anybody. I said, here's what the county did, and posted it on Facebook. And I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I got to come up with this money. They won't let me make payments. I'm like, and then all of a sudden it was paid for. So I've been very blessed in that. But to the point, it was almost $1,000 by the time the county added their taxes and late fees and charges.
Wow.
It was only like $450 of taxes, but by the time it was all done, there was almost $600 worth of fees and stuff tacked onto it, which
see, that's what makes it bad. If you can't pay the 500, what makes you think you can pay the 1,000 or 1,500, whatever they're going to charge you? See, this is the part I don't understand about stuff is, oh, you're late. Oh yeah, you owed 500. Well, now you owe 1,000. We're going to own that property. Like they want to take it, you know.
And they've got people, that have enough money. And like my piece of property, not to brag, but because I'm on the Little Ochlockonee Rivers in my backyard, there are very few places that are small acreage like mine that have access to the river. Everything else is a plantation with at least 100 or more acres. So you can't get to the Little Ochlockonee River if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Not that it's special, but you just can't get to it. So it's our little piece of heaven down here. Me and my neighbor, Mr. Ricky, and Miss Sheila over there, we got our little piece of heaven down here on the river, and we like it.
That is awesome. Well, someday I'm going to have my own too. So, but it probably might not be on a river, but
invest in it now. Whatever it is, invest in it now and pay for it.
Well, I finally got moved out of Wisconsin, and I'm consolidated now, and I'm right where I want to be. So this next year, I'm going to start looking for a piece of property. I'm hoping to find something. You know what I'd like to find? And this is kind of sound kind of funny, but maybe you'll agree with me. And so I'm thinking about, this is what I'm thinking. Buying a place in maybe Montana, for instance, or South Dakota. Well, now both of these places like Montana and South Dakota are known for having, gold in the rivers. That's where all the miners were, right? And I was reading several of these books and stuff, about these guys. And I've seen people on the internet and stuff where they go down to the river and pan for gold, right? Now, to you and me.
I have panned for gold.
Yes.
In North Georgia, where the first the first gold rush was.
Yes.
So, yeah, I panned for gold. Been there, done that quite a few times.
Did you get any?
Yes.
Yeah. So here's the thing,
little pieces, but the answer is yes.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts. It's like,
you got to know where to go.
You got to know where to go, right? And you go to the river. Say for instance, you know where to go, and I say I retire, and I don't have a job, whatever. I'm leisure, you know what I mean. Nothing to do. You go to the river, and of course the taxes are really low. How long do you, and say my taxes were $500 a year, how long do you think it'd take me to pan $500 worth of gold nowadays?
It depends. It honestly depends on where that river is and the concentration.
Yeah.
Because the amount of gold we found, it wouldn't pay for a cup of coffee. Tiny little flakes and stuff. It is gold, but it ain't buying you nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to have to find some pieces, some chunks and nuggets or something. So you're going to have to get lucky.
Yes.
And you're going to have to know where to look and know what you're doing. And and panning for gold and sitting out in the stream, and there's a lot of shoveling and digging, and it's hard work.
Well, yeah,
it ain't easy. It ain't easy.
I totally believe that, but I'm also thinking is that, I mean, if you got no way else to make a living, and you're living out there, how long could you do, because it'd be free in the stream, how long, if I spent the summer out there, could I make $500? And I thought about this.
It's possible.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
possible.
and especially with as high as gold is now, that it wouldn't take that much to make $500.
Well, here's something else though, too. It's not just the gold. There are other places too that there are semi-precious gemstones.
Mm-hmm.
So you might find sapphire, or some like if there where the sapphires are in North Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
ruby mines. I'm sorry. Well, there's sapphire up there too.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on where you're at, there are folks who make a decent amount of living off of gemstones.
Yes. Yes.
So it wouldn't just be gold, but you can be panning for other things that show up, from that. So, but anyway.
But I thought it'd be one of those ways a person could generate some kind of income.
If you were near enough to the right streams,
yeah,
the answer would be yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are my thoughts. And I'm thinking maybe this next summer, I would like to take a vacation. I'll plan it all out. I'm going to do a little research. I'm good at researching, and then take a trip out there and then pan for some gold and just see what happens. What an adventure that will be. You know what I'm saying?
Can I give you a 10-cent on where to find?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you want to find the streams that are downstream from any claims.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, oh man, it's been 30 years ago or more. Mm-hmm. I bought a book that was in print. It was all of the gold claims in Georgia, mm-hmm. back from 1842 or something like that. So what you do is you find where the claims are, mm-hmm. or have been, mm-hmm. and there will be records as to which mine did what and blah, 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 blah. And so you want to find, if they're digging or blasting or whatever, then it's going to leach downstream. Mm-hmm. So wherever the mines or the claims were,
yeah,
or are, go in the rivers or streams or whatever downstream of those claims. That's the answer. Cool. Because you can go, oh, well, there's gold up here, and if you go in this river, yeah, but is there a claim anywhere nearby where they actually found any?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's in this river. Okay, but where on the river?
That's agree.
What's important.
That's what's important. And then I was reading about, like, as the river curves, which spot of the river to get it, you want to find it at the one bend or the other where the sediment builds up. And then one guy told me, he says, you got to find a river that comes from the mountains, because at least 9,000 feet, he says that's where the gold is, at the 9,000 foot mark. And then any rivers that come down from that level bring the gold down with them. And I thought that was kind of interesting too. So,
well, and also in the streams where the little waterfalls are trickling down, if you pan, you pan the bottom of those little holes.
Yeah.
Because gold is very heavy. So yeah. When you're panning for gold, you're sloshing everything else out, and the gold is sitting on the bottom. So the gold will also sit on the bottom of these little waterfall spots. And especially if there's a hard rock underneath it. So like in North Georgia, there's granite and so forth. And so the sand and stuff will collect in there, and so will the gold. It's almost like a gold sluice.
Yep.
So, the sluice has got little dividers on it. The water comes down and the gold gets trapped in the sluice. Mm-hmm. So, but you dig in those places with your pan and pan those spots out, and those can be very lucrative.
I know the one guy that I met out here one time when I first got here. He said, well, he lived in Idaho, and he says, buddy would go into the mountains or whatever. And every time he came back, he would come back and he'd throw 2 5-gallon. He knew what stream to go to, and he'd throw 2 5-gallon buckets of dirt from the stream into these 5-gallon buckets and take it home and wash it out. And he says every time he did, he says he'd always find a bunch of gold in there. Not, at least a little bit, of gold in the 2 5-gallon buckets. And I'm thinking, wow, what's the chances that, he apparently knew where it was, and he'd just stop his car on the side of the road, run down to the creek, scoop the buckets up, throw it in his car and take it home and, slosh it out at home, and he'd find little bits and pieces of gold. And I'm thinking, wow, he says, sometimes he got really lucky and sometimes, it was okay, but he always found something. And I thought,
I still have a 5-gallon bucket of sand. I swear it's behind my shed as we're sitting here, that I bought a bag of sand from a North Georgia mine to bring it home and sluice it out. And the bag got a hole on it, heavy duty plastic bag. And I put it in the bucket, and somewhere it's still in that dang bucket. There's a bucket of sand, and that I should still, there could be a good sized nugget in there.
Yeah.
But the sand did come from an official open mine up there in around Dahlonega, Georgia, and up around Helen up there.
Huh.
Interesting. But there are folks who claim that they're going to go out somewhere and dig out sand, and because they're supposed to be gold in this in the ocean, and you can go and sift it out of different places around. And my dear friends, I've done a lot of gold searching, and I've got books and paraphernalia. I've been in streams, and I'm here to tell you, gold is only where it's produced. And it's produced in mountains. It's produced where there was a lot of heat, and volcanic action. And and it's in certain types of rock, quartz. There'll be quartz veins with gold in it. I've got pieces of rock that I've gotten from North Georgia. So gold just ain't anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's not everywhere like some people want to try to get you to believe. But you being out west and Montana and out there, that's a whole different ballyhoo. And, not many folks out there. And when I was working at Prestolite, there was a whole group of us who were into, gold mining techniques and in rivers and stuff. And there are little portable sluices and things that you can take. And depending on where you're at, you can set these up in the river. So you can scoop a bucket of dirt or whatever out of the river and dump it down your sluice, and let the water do the work for you instead of sitting there and panning. So you can actually do a lot more panning, quote, so. But anyway, there's a whole groups of folks that will just go on vacation and would go out there to different places and pan.
Well, like I said, I've been reading about some of these places in Montana. There's so many ghost towns out there because they were mining towns. And I'm thinking, mining town after mining town after mining town, rivers and stuff named for, whatever. But anyway, Mossy Man, he's all into the gold panning. He says all the gold is in Canada. That's because the Yukon up there, it's too cold to go up there too long.
But here's something else, though, and there's old silver mines too.
Yep, silver, gold.
And so with the price of silver, for a hobby, you shouldn't knock that out of the, as something either. So, but going in these old mines, there's several folks on YouTube and such, and that's what they do. They search these old mines and go and pan and dig and, back when I was a younger lad, I went up into North Georgia and literally went and dug crystals, for example. And so that depending on what you're going to do, that if you get a good strike with some crystals, then you can take those and resell them and make a good, that might be easier than gold, but there are a lot of things that you could prospect for.
That's true. And I was thinking, like I said, there's different things like in my, if I got a place in Montana, there's gold panning. Plus, there's also like a lot of people do a lot of trapping there, and hides and furs, coyotes and wolves and, you name it, beavers and things. And I don't know if I'm into that so much, but, how many would it take to pay my taxes? That's the way I look at it.
Right.
I mean, a couple of good 2-3 hides and, a little bit of gold and paid my taxes. And then I get a little bit of income from Social Security if it's still there, and maybe my retirement stuff. And, I'm doing pretty good. I can eat and sleep and have a roof over my head and pay my taxes. We're good,
There you go.
I mean, I'm thinking of ways in the future. This is long ways in the future, but it is a plan, because a lot of people, you're sitting there thinking, well, what can I do? You got to have some kind of resource to make money. What do you got? Nothing. If you got nothing,
or some way to to eat. I mean, for example, it was yesterday that me and Duggar went down. I bought a bag of deer corn, like they grew it just for the deer. But anyway, you can't just buy a bag of deer. I mean, I'm sorry, you can't just buy a bag of corn this time of year.
Yeah.
Every bag of corn is deer corn now. But anyway, so I bought a bag of deer corn, and I'm taking it with a bucket and going down in the woods and toting it down there and spreading it out into places. So because I don't necessarily want to hunt them, but my neighbor does.
And then he'll give you meat.
I do have a strong enough crossbow and enough hunting arrows and so forth, that if I have to, I have gutted and split and skinned a deer before. It's not the most pleasant thing in the world, but I have done it actually a couple of times from deer that were killed on this property. So I've had my hands in it. So, but if I'm going to be that hungry, then okie doke. But my biggest thing is that, turkey also eat the corn. So do squirrels. Yep. There's other animals that eat the corn.
Yep.
But I'm more interested in where are the deer. And I've spread the corn out to where I've seen deer tracks, trails, and so forth. So for me, it gives me an opportunity to go look and see if the deer have eaten the corn.
You need a trail cam.
Yeah, I do, but I haven't been able to afford one yet. They're a little out of my pocket right now, and I got to pay. I got to pay taxes now, so it's like, the trail cam's going to have to wait. But absolutely, my neighbor's got a trail cam, and they catch all kind of deer. So between our two pieces of property, which is about my almost 19 acres, and they're right at 20 acres. We've got almost 40 acres between us.
Wow.
So, nice bunch of, wooded area and places for the deer to go. And when I was on the river, I could tell where the deer are crossing the river and jumping to the other bank, to the other side. So, a lot of traffic. So,
wow. Cool.
If I get hungry and I can't make it and things hit the fan, then I know where they are, and I feed them a little bit and make sure they come through the same areas so they frequent that area. Yeah. Is it baiting them? Sort of.
That's all right. Well, we're long in the tooth. Are you going to do a show tonight?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, everybody, go get yourself a cup of coffee. Joanne Dancing Gypsy's in the house. She says, how can I pay the taxes when I can't afford to eat? Yeah, I know. That's
you
the
go.
Thing. Mossy Man, someday we'll have to hook up and go gold panning together. That sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Pa Joe says we had doused with our witch on our property, water and gold down about 40 feet deep. Well, Son of a gun.
Wow.
Michelle Can-Am Free is in the house. Much love to you. She's been putting up some really good pictures on Instagram. Thank you for that. Okay, well, everybody, I'm gonna let y'all go. Remember, go out, be the frequency you want to receive, and catch David in a little bit. See you tomorrow on Smokin' G Sharp with Max Vision, and we're talking about Antarctica tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. See you there.
Love
Peace,
you.
everybody.
Bye. Cheers.